Testing. Okay, colleagues, good morning and welcome to our Strategic Plan and Budget Committee meeting on November the 20th. Actually, it is the 20th today, isn't it? Yes. Wow, how time flies. I'll now call on Regional Clerk Will Short to perform the roll call. Will.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Deutschmann. Councillor Erb. Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Chair Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hunick. Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Solonen. Councillor
Present.
Councillor Solonen. Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Verbanovic is going to be joining us later. Councillor Williams and Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. Are there any, sorry, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gathered today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will now consider a motion to go into closed session. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Fox and seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your yes or no in e-scribe, please.
I'm in favor.
In favor? Sounds like this one's going to pass. Okay, and that's carried. Colleagues, we will now proceed to the Waterloo County room for closed session. Okay, we'll now have a motion to reconvene into open session, moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Chair Redmond. All those in favor, please.
Just 1 second.
Okay, that's carried, folks. I'd like to welcome Chief Crowell of the Waterloo Region Police Service, members of the Waterloo Region Police Service, as well as members of the board of the Waterloo Region Police Service to our community day today. I'll call upon Chief Mark Crowell to deliver the Waterloo Region Police Service's 2025 budget presentation. Welcome, Chief. And Chair McLean.
Well, thank you and good morning, members of Regional Council. I'm Ian McLean and I'm here in my role as the Chair of Waterloo Region Police Services Board. It's an honor to serve the community of Waterloo Region, of which all of you around this council and I care deeply about. I'm pleased to be joined by Chief Mark Crowell, Deputy Jennifer Davis, and Deputy Eugene Fenton. And I'm also here representing my fellow board members, including Chair Redmond, Mayor Shantz, Regional Councillor Doug Craig, Tony Giovinazzo, Karen Quigley-Hobbs, Jim Schmidt, and I think Megan Martin is joining us, the board's executive assistant. All of us on the board have spent most of our lives in Waterloo Region, have deep roots in the community here. We approach each budget thinking about our neighbors who may need to dial 911, trusting that the help that they need in that moment will be on the other end. And that is a public service responsibility that we all take very seriously. Today, we're very proud to present to Council the 2025 approved operating and capital estimates. The core mandate of a police board is to ensure that a community has adequate and effective policing for its residents, and the budget is an instrumental component of that work. The 2025 budget is the result of many months of hard work by the WRPS finance team led by Kirsten Hand and Brennan Reiners. Again, this year we received input directly from our residents over 2 public input sessions and appreciate those who took the time to bring forward their ideas. Through the public input and the board's own review, WRPS prudently found savings from the initial draft budget. We recognize the broader budget pressures faced across the public sector. I think we're on slide 3, my apologies. Thanks. I would like to introduce the 2 guiding documents that provide overall direction to the board and the service. Firstly, in February, WRPS launched its new 3-year strategic plan. The plan has 4 renewed strategic commitments, which are safety, connections, members, and resources. The 2025 budget is deeply rooted in each of those 4 strategic priorities. During the plan's development, residents shared their feelings of safety, perceptions of crime, and police visibility. What we have heard is that increasing visibility and police presence are the top solutions for increasing public safety trust and confidence. Next slide. Earlier this year, for the first time in 34 years, the primary legislation governing police services changed with the Community Safety and Policing Act coming into effect. The legislation includes significant changes to police governance and contains new general standards that a board must consider. The service has worked diligently to prepare and implement the new legislative changes within our organization and have absorbed costs in becoming compliant, mainly in the form of new equipment and training obligations. In 2025 alone, implementation of the new regulations will cost $1.6 million. Next slide. Under that legislation, and what brings us before Council today is the annual operating and capital budget estimates. The Police Service Board is responsible for ensuring that the services budget delivers on the core requirements of adequate and effective policing. 99% of the 2025 operating budget can be measured directly back to those core requirements of the Community Safety and Policing Act. Next slide. This slide shows some pertinent data to provide a glimpse into the background behind this year's budget. As is not a surprise to anyone at this council, the region of Waterloo is experiencing a massive population growth. According to Stats Can, Waterloo region is now one of the fastest growing areas in all of Canada. Between 2021 and 2023, the region's population increased by more than 60,000 residents. While there have been a significant increase, our staffing levels compared to population have not kept up. Sworn officers are now seeing the challenges of meeting these rising demands. Next slide. The next graph displays WRPS staffing increases over the last 10 years. As you can see, over the last decade, investments in our sworn officers have not kept up with operational realities. Investments have not been made in a smooth or consistent fashion, causing challenges both in terms of recruitment and retention. For example, from 2013 to 2018, only one new sworn officer was added as the region's population grew substantially. As a result of previous underinvestment, the board decided to make the necessary enhancements to bring staffing to more sustainable levels. Next slide. This chart displays where WRPS ranks among other comparably sized police services. WRPS sworn officer staffing levels have consistently been below the Big 12, provincial, and national averages since 2019. But it's important to point out that that's just one data point, that each community and service is unique, and the budget before you reflects the unique needs and challenges of Waterloo Region today. As a board, the inadequate level of staffing and its impact on service delivery has been an important consideration developed in this year's budget. Next slide. The 2025 budget reflects the third year of the board's modernization and recruitment strategy, which includes an increase of 55 officers starting in 2023. This budget before you is an investment in our community and a direct response to some of the growing challenges we are experiencing. It makes critical investments in public safety with the proposed addition of 18 uniformed officers in high-demand areas. And this includes new officers in frontline patrol, traffic, and investigative services. As chair of the police board, our board, and it's our responsibility to ensure that we are responding to both present and future community challenges in a safe and responsible manner. The responsibility is to balance our mandate while understanding these are challenging economic times. As a board, we feel that the budget estimates we are presenting to council responds to those pressures and makes a necessary investment in frontline officer staffing. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Chief Mark Crowell. Chief Crowell is now 2 years into the position and has already made remarkable progress. The board is continually impressed with his vision for a modern and equitable service where both community safety and innovation are prioritized. I can speak confidently on behalf of the board in stating he has our full support. Chief.
Well, good morning, all members of council. It's an honor to be here on behalf of all members of the Waterloo Regional Police Service and on behalf of our community. In continuing the presentation, I'm struck every day that across the region of Waterloo, there are stories and news reports of our members carrying out their duties, whether it's in print, whether it's across radio waves, across TV or social media. We hear stories of our members serving in the community a wide variety of complex needs. As detailed in the supplementary package, WRPS responds to well over 300,000 calls for service per year. Those comprise 911 calls, non-emergency calls, online reporting, and our member-generated occurrences in response to those needs. And I can say that the demands upon our service have never been greater, just as they are stretching every social service across the region of Waterloo and beyond. The calls for assistance and requests for service from the public encompass requests for visibility, enhanced crime prevention and proactive duties, crime response and investigative efforts, emergency response of many kinds, assistance to victims, maintaining public order, and a myriad of requests for positive community engagement. And in every circumstance, our service is striving to meet the needs and expectations of our rapidly growing and changing community. Year over year, we also report back to this council and to the community where we stand in comparison to Canada and provincial data. Statistics Canada provides us a collection of metrics and comparison points to see where we stand, where our community stands in terms of crime across the region on a number of fronts. So within Waterloo Region, we stand as the third highest crime severity index for total crime amongst the Big 12 comparator services in Ontario, and we are above the above the provincial average and falling just below the national average. And this is the total accumulation of crime calls related to the Uniform Crime Reporting Index. When we look at the Violent Crime Severity Index, this has the most impact upon the members of the community that we all serve. When we look at Waterloo Regional Police, we now have the fourth highest position amongst the Big 12 comparators in Ontario. We stand above the provincial average for crime severity, and we also are below the national average. But we are making considerable strides in our efforts in our crime suppression plans. We have just spent a significant number of months aligning our resources to attack all the pressures that we're facing on many fronts when it comes to the highest levels of criminality, dealing with prolific offenders, prolific offenses, and we are making great strides in a number of areas. In the coming year, you will see a new model of divisional support for investigative services and frontline response that we hope will allow us to stem the tide in some of the challenges that we're facing. Members of the Waterloo Regional Police Service have amongst the highest crime and caseloads across all of Canada in terms of our comparisons. This puts immense pressure upon our service delivery capabilities, but we have also made great strides to say that our case clearance capacity in comparison is also widely successful across many fronts. When we look at some of the categories of challenges that we face in our response in terms of the complexity of crimes, I'll speak to hate crimes and hate-motivated incidents a little later on. But when I'm in the community, I can tell you that the highest need that is expressed to me is the concern about youth crime, the involvement of young people in organized crime, violent crime, and we, amongst many community partners, have assembled a youth engagement strategy that we hope will bring us new capacities and new ways to intervene on a myriad of positive avenues, including diversionary efforts. Those investigations and those interventions take time and precious collaboration to ensure that we're off on the right front. We have said to this council and our community many times that we're continuing to respond to two neighborhoods, the real life incidents that play out in homes and neighborhoods and on city blocks, but also the online neighborhood where cybercrime continues to grow across Canada, provincially and locally. We have significant backlogs in our areas of cybercrime, cyber fraud in many forms, and internet child exploitation, where there are hundreds of cases that are in the queue for our response. And we look at the complexity of artificial intelligence being layered over traditional crimes, and this is posing major challenges to our total capacity. When we look at some of the more traditional metrics that impact our sense of safety as a community, our violent crime trends continue to pose significant challenges. We've had 19 shootings year to date. We continue to see a growth in the availability of weapons in our community, real firearms, imitation firearms that are used in offenses, knives, and other weapons of opportunity. We've year to date seen a decrease in our homicide investigations from 3 this year compared to 6 in totality last year. And our crime suppression efforts in addressing robberies, break-and-enters, and shootings are starting to bear fruit. We are seeking with our public safety partners locally but also across the province to intervene in those organized crime, drug trafficking enterprises that are fueling a lot of the behavior we see spilling out onto the streets. This year to date, we are trending towards 800 vehicle thefts within our region. You'll be well aware of the trend of high-end vehicle thefts that have taken hold across the Greater Toronto Area. We have not been immune to that trend, but what we've seen in the last year is a doubling of our violent carjackings. and that is the robbery, often with a weapon, at the point of someone entering their car, and also home invasions is a trend we are continuing to see for the purpose of stealing high-end vehicles, entering people's homes to steal the vehicles, confronting family members in their midst. When we look at the traffic safety efforts, we're very encouraged by the efforts of this council and all municipal leaders to work in collaboration on our Safe Roadways program, looking at how we can work in road design as active transportation becomes a viable opportunity for all citizens of this community. Your attention to road safety efforts, automated speed enforcement, and many of those capacities assist us as a community to tackle the issues of road safety. I'll draw attention to the areas of focus that we are most often from an enforcement and a visibility capacity seeking to address, and that's the fatal 4 incidents. That's speeding and aggressive driving, impaired driving, distracted driving, and seatbelt charges. And you'll see displayed that across all of these enforcement capacities, we have a decrease in every one of these categories. And this speaks to challenges that we're facing with the complexity of motor vehicle collisions, a high-end number of fatal 4 road fatalities, where there's been 14 deaths in our community year to date, an increase over last year, and a number of major injury collisions that continue to cause us great concern as a police service and as a community. And it will be a collective effort as we continue to address these road safety needs into the future. So the traditional mode of crime response and policing is certainly important, but we want to also just draw attention to the legacy of the Waterloo Regional Police Service Center efforts to continue to be innovative, collaborative, and seeking the best approach with a model of community-led policing and focusing on preventative efforts. We have within our midst what I describe as the best within a generation opportunity with the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan to collaborate on the issues that we need to address the most, that will change the tide of the safety in our community. Over a year ago, we, as a community, highlighted the top 4 areas of focus under the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, those being intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and missing murder Indigenous women and girls, combating hate, addressing mental health and addiction needs, and creating safe and inclusive spaces. Our members are devoted to this plan. We believe this is our best collective effort. What we are anticipating is enhanced levels of investment, enhanced levels of collaboration, and attention to these focus areas. Every year, our members respond to over 6,200 cases of intimate partner violence. This region and municipalities have declared intimate partner violence to be an epidemic, and we need to reinvigorate and reinvent what has been known as the Family Violence Project, which has served this community well for almost 2 decades, to address the growth and the diversity of our community, or we will never get ahead and to stem the tide of those challenges behind closed doors. Our members are responding to over 400 cases of sexual violence and over 600 youth protection investigations annually. Hate crimes and hate-motivated crimes I'll address shortly, and thousands of mental health crisis calls, suicide, attempt suicide calls, and addictions-related concerns continue to be the bulk of many of our responses. So when we look to areas where we can collectively invest, where we can come together as one unified community, it is our service's assertion that this is the best opportunity, and we are looking at other communities that have had grand success in collaborating, creating action tables that have allowed everyone to come together with all of community solutions. This is an area for unity and our collective attention. And I'll draw just some examples of where this will make a difference moving forward. We've been proud to have led some innovative programs, such as the Crisis Call Diversion Program, and that is the at-source potential for diversion, mental health professionals embedded in our Public Safety Communications Center that has an ability to divert to mental health professionals. We have had, I would recall, amongst the best-in-class crisis intervention models where we co-respond to certain criteria calls with mental health professionals in the community. We are working collaboratively on alternative destination models with paramedic services, with mental health professionals, and public health as well. To advance, we need to create more of these capacities to allow us as a community to address mental health in a different way. We are supportive of the calls for additional mental health and addictions funding to allow us to tackle these issues, and we are concerned that there appears to be some restrictions or pulling back of some of those mental health supports. We have an application active with the province of Ontario. We hope to take the IMPACT program, our co-response model with Canadian Mental Health Association, to a 24/7 capacity, and we await for that answer to see the grant opportunity that has been submitted. When it comes to responding to mental health, this also arises in issues related to housing insecurity, homelessness, and addiction in many forms. And although the Waterloo Regional Police Service is not named in the plan to end chronic homelessness, I can assure you that we are involved in many respects addressing these needs on an everyday basis. We are involved in the encampment discussion on an everyday basis, the small ones, the more organized encampments. We are there in support and in collaboration with our community partners, providing care and compassion and dignity-first approaches to connecting people to vital housing and support services in many forms. You will see displayed that last year in 2023, we attended over 10,000 occurrences within the immediate or surrounding areas and encampments, because there are crime-related issues related to encampments in every corner of this region. Providing that balance, providing that supportive role in many respects is a complex one, as one will require a continued collective attention, and we applaud efforts of this council in this region and all area municipalities to address these issues with focus and tenacity. You can see, though, that our collective involvement in this space continues to rise over the past number of years, as has been the trend across Canada and across Ontario. This council will be very aware of the rise in hate, polarization in many forms, hate crimes, hate-motivated incidents, and many of the challenges that members in our communities are facing when it comes to the polarized environment that we're in. I believe that you are all aware that we, in the most recent Statistics Canada report, looking at 2023, stand as the 5th highest as a region, as a census metropolitan region, as for the number of police-reported hate-motivated crimes. This community it ranks higher than larger municipalities such as Calgary or Edmonton, and we stand as the number 1 ranked municipality for per capita ranking of hate-motivated crimes to police. We know that we need to do more and better as a community to address these issues. There is a silver lining which speaks to reports to police, speak to confidence and trust in their institutions. But when we dive into this work and we listen and work with our supportive community partners, we describe this like an iceberg. We know we're simply scratching the surface on the polarization and the experiences of the residents that we all serve, and this is one area of focus that requires our collective attention. I will just, if you're not aware, Waterloo Regional Police plays a proud collaborative role as a hub for something called the Hate Crime Extremism Investigative Team. This is a provincial hub model where we host coordination with over 20 police services across the province of Ontario to tackle issues of hate crime and extremism. And through the support of the provincial government, we hope to amplify that model and that capacity moving forward to tackle one of the avenues of hate and extremism in our community. I'll just draw attention to 2 trends that we are observing, not unlike many communities across Canada, related to polarization and just change. So since 2019, up until today, we've seen a growth in our required deployment of our public order capacity. And this is the specialized team approach to addressing large public safety gatherings on a number of fronts. We have lived through the pandemic. We have seen public displays of gathering and protests in many forms. And oftentimes, for the largest of those gatherings, we require support from other police services to assist us with some of those gatherings, and we provide that in-kind support as well. So you can see displayed the number of public safety deployments that our service has been involved in over the past number of years, continues to escalate every year, and this is overtime for the unplanned events, and we do this very well. We're very proud of the collective efforts to allow people to gather, to protest, to express themselves, to express their charter rights of all forms, and we have had great success within this community and beyond. The next trend is something that is a new term for many, is known as swatting, and this is the false calls to emergency services to enact an emergency response. It could involve police, fire services, paramedic services, and beyond. We've seen a dramatic rise in the increase of swatting calls, which are fake calls to police seeking to cause disruption to our society in many forms. We've had schools shut down for days. We've had commercial plazas that have been cleared. And we continue to be addressing these issues with great complexity with the advance of artificial intelligence. We are monitoring the globe in North America to see this is a growing trend and an immense challenge for providing public safety communications with the many ways that people can mask their identity, causing disruption to our social infrastructure. When it comes to the impacts on our members, very proud to lead a resilient and very focused workforce that is professional in all capacities. The toll from a health and safety standpoint upon our members is significant. We continue as we catch up to staffing levels that we feel are responsible and prudent to be staffing many of our frontline shifts every hour of every day with overtime, meeting just minimal response standards. We have contingency plans where when staffing needs cannot be met on the front line to address those crucial requests for service from our community, to pull back officers from investigative areas, from traffic services, from any of our proactive duties to fill those frontline capacities. And that is becoming a growing reliance when we're unable to fill spots through overtime. Those contingencies have been around forever, but I'll just draw attention to that is the impact of cascading, filling frontline needs first, and not wanting to create stress on the total system of our investigative capacity. So you'll see displayed here the total spectrum of overtime over the past 5 years. We are operating well above our estimates for overtime. We are hopeful that with the continued onboarding of staffing levels to meet the needs of our community, that this will be something we'll be able to manage. I can tell you we have clear focus on not wanting one additional hour of overtime than is required. It is not a fiscally prudent way to operate, and it's not from a member safety and wellness standpoint, a way that we want to operate either. So we're very hopeful that in the coming year and beyond, we'll be able to address the issues of overtime for all the right reasons. Just building upon some of the metrics Chair McLean demonstrated, when you look at the past decade, as this community has grown, you can see that the overall officer to population ratio has been diminished. And with the support of our board, we're seeking to address these growth needs in supplementing and growing our staffing to areas that are acceptable and in line with communities across Canada. And so you can see that the yellow line here displays the recent efforts in the last couple of years to bring us up to a parity level with other communities of similar makeup. We understand that comparisons may only go so far in some respects, but to give some perspective to those unaware of how tax dollars are spent and disseminated in terms of all of the levels of taxation within our region. The current proportion of police on the regional tax bill is currently 30.6%. We have seen this proportion been reduced since 2021, where in 2023, for instance, it was 31.3%. And you can see displayed on the bar graphs here that outside of Halton Region and Ottawa, the Waterloo Regional Police Service in Waterloo Region has the third lowest cost per resident amongst our comparators in Ontario. And in plain language, this means that the cost of policing in every other community outside of Halton, Ottawa, and Waterloo is more. And will draw this comparison. It comes from the financial information return data that is reported annually. And this has been a stable position for the Waterloo region for a number of years. So we have met the needs of our hiring capacity. We have devoted innovative and approaches and necessary resources from a human resource capacity to find the best talent, to meet the expectations of our board and our community. And so we are now at a full complement staffing level. We have, within this calendar year up to November, covered the attrition gap for those who have resigned and retired in 2024. And as displayed in your supplementary package, we are now flush in terms of our full authorized staffing. And this allows us an opportunity to continue to grow into the third year of the board-approved staffing plan to hire additional 18 officers within 2025. We've also sought to innovate in our approach to creating a reliable funnel, mirroring a program that we had in Waterloo Region decades ago and a common practice amongst most modernized police service. We now have a cadet program which allows a small portion of onboarding and familiarization to the career of policing. And in just a few short months, we have seen great success in developing that early career capacity, and we will start to see the transition of cadets into full-time officers. And that has been the trend of all services of similarity that have enacted a cadet program or have had one for many decades. And I'll just draw attention to the addition of the 55 frontline officers that was approved, began in 2023, carried through into 2024. This was an analysis done on 2021 and 2022 data. This spoke only to the recommendation and the conclusion through our analysis, but it was also supported by an external consultant who recommended the immediate infusion of 55 frontline officers. It did not address investigative capacities. It did not address the additions of civilian support that is crucial to our operations. And so here we stand with an opportunity to continue on the path, which we believe is responsible and prudent. So now I'll turn over the next couple slides to our Director of Finance and Assets, Kirsten Hand, who will walk you through the work and the drivers of our current budget position. Thank you.
Good morning. So at Waterloo Regional Police Service, we started our budget process in the spring. We went through numerous reviews at various leadership levels, which culminated in a presentation to our board in September. Receiving feedback and direction from the board resulted in us coming back with a operating budget estimate for both operating and capital for their consideration. Through those reviews, we were successful in reducing our operating budget estimate down by $5 million or just over 2% on the operating budget perspective and $1.3 million on our capital for 2025. I'm going to talk to some of the budget drivers that impacted our increase year over year. The largest one is contractual adjustments. So over 90% of our budget relates to people and staffing. So staffing costs is a big component. Our collective agreements for our members expire at the end of this year. So as a result, we have included an estimate based upon analysis of other police service bargaining results for cost of living adjustments. In addition, benefit costs continue to rise, not just for the police, but many industries. Some of those costs relate to enhanced Canada Pension Plan program costs. We've also seen, which is specific often to emergency responders, higher WSIB costs due to presumptive legislation and PTSD. But we continue to see cost increases in health, dental, and long-term disability premiums. Also, with higher salaries comes higher benefits for other elements, such as OMERS or employee health tax. I will note that the board is aware of the increase of these benefit costs and proactively have worked to mitigate them, including the grandparenting of lifetime benefits for retirees in 2021. The other piece relates to our staffing expansion plan. This was a multi-year board-endorsed staffing plan that included both sworn officers and a civilian support component. I will note that we have a quite extensive review process when it comes to adding FTEs. Departments were required to submit detailed business cases looking at workload analysis, alternate service delivery, and through that, our staff planning committee, which is a committee at WRPS that meets bi-weekly to look at resource allocations throughout the service, recommended inclusions in the 2025 budget. As a result, 22 of those positions did not move forward. Other staffing costs relate to our Emergency Services Cooperative for Ontario called ESCO. This was our formerly known as PRIDE. This is a consortium of 5 police services that work together to provide technology for the 5 police services as a cost-effective manner of providing that technology. There were some approved FTEs from that perspective. We also continued with the pilot projects for both cadet and part-time police, and ensuring that we have the capacity to backfill members that are permanently off on leaves, as well as looking at increasing the overtime budget. I will note that offsetting those pieces was our salary gapping or position vacancy target. We increased that from $2 to $3 million, which reduced our operating budget by $1 million. That was through an analysis of where we look at attrition of members that either retire or resign to replacing those individuals, as well as looking at where we have leaves that can't be backfilled on the sworn side, such as mat and pat leaves, as well as looking at our FTEs in the budget compared to when they'll be filled. The next piece relates to our reserve strategy. The board endorsed a reserve policy, which is very similar to the regions. It looks at our proposed capital plan and ensures that existing assets, both equipment and facility, are funded as you go through the operating budget and not relying upon debt financing. As a result, there was recommendations to increase some of those reserve contributions. I will also note that continuing from the 2024 budget, we are putting money away to fund unfunded liabilities, such as the sick leave and employee future benefits reserve. Technology investments. So this includes both investments for our ESCO consortium, as well as for WRPS, and includes items such as security improvements, business intelligence tools, upgrades to computer-aided dispatch fingerprinting and records management systems, ensuring we can meet new operational requirements such as digital evidence, in-car body-worn video, looking at electronic note-taking by officers from current paper-based methods, interview recording technology, support to our human resource information system, artificial intelligence, and security upgrades. Not noted on this slide, but another piece is inflation, which I know a lot of budgets are impacted by in 2025, as well as the legislative impacts through the new act. Offsetting those was increases in revenues from cost recovery from ESCO, so that's the 4 other police services, increases in volume of record checks, court security funding from the provincial government, and other provincial grants. So as a result, the operating budget estimate is $252 million, or an increase of 10.52% year over year. Based upon the assessment growth of 1.81%, the tax impact on the police portion of the property tax bill would be 8.56%. From an operating budget perspective, the 2025 request is just almost $17 million, and the 10-year forecast is $426 million. This includes items such as ensuring that we have capital funds to replace existing assets, such as vehicles, equipment, and facility renewal. But it also includes new projects. Some of the new projects from an information technology perspective include ESCO-related projects, so that's upgrading fingerprinting technology, as well as ensuring that we can comply with CRTC deadlines for next generation 911. There is a spring deadline of next year to ensure that our communication centers have the appropriate technology to accept text messages, and as I noted, those are both ESCO-related projects, which means that we see cost recovery from the 4 other police services and achieve economies of scale in terms of that technology. The other item is the Human Resource Information System. So this is a joint partnership with the region where we saw phase 1 implemented of April of this year, which included employee core, payroll, time and attendance, and recruiting. And phase 2 will be implemented next year, which includes items such as talent, succession planning, incident disability management. The last item from an information technology perspective relates to body-worn video. We have a multi-year program to roll that out across the service. It's been implemented at North Division, Waterloo, South Division, Cambridge, and next year we'll roll out to Central Division in Kitchener. From a facilities perspective, we updated our facilities master plan. The last time that was completed was in 2018, so it was a requirement to go back and look at that plan. We hired a consultant, and our project team included both regional and WRPS facility representatives. As a result, a proposed facilities master plan was presented to the board and incorporated into the 10-year capital forecast. To touch upon a couple elements within the next couple of years includes the outfitting of the 3rd floor at Central, so that was shell space when that building was created. We are currently working to move our backup communication center from Old Central into New Central, which is also mandated by NG 911 deadlines. And then we'll be looking at outfitting plans for the remainder of that space to support staff growth, as many of our facilities are at or near capacity. The other piece is our Public Safety Communication Center. That was within the plan already. However, there was a recommendation from the consultant that we need to ensure that we have a smart growth strategy. We need to ensure that since it's our next construction of a major facility, that we ensure that there's shell space also within that building, which has been our strategy with the other buildings built, to prepare for future growth and ensure that we have the capacity to do so. It also allowed us to defer $23 million of other expansion facility projects that otherwise would have been required. I'll turn it back now over to the chief.
Thank you. Just a couple more slides. So thanks, Kirsten, for that overview. So just drawing attention to ways in which we continue with great collaboration to support the region in many forms. And the primary example is the Public Safety Answering Point, also known as a PSAP. Every 911 call for paramedics or fire services or police could be OPP call that it was in our jurisdiction comes into the Public Safety Answering Point or the 911 Communication Center. That is a cost of $9 million of regionalized services. That's the primary bulk of the services that we have proudly sought to serve. I can tell you that the complexity of public safety communications is on an exponential path. We are seeing more calls for service for the same incidents, multiplying with the addition of mobile phones carried by almost every citizen now. We are seeing immense complexity in the types of emergencies called into our service. And what we have enjoyed as a collaborative relationship for WRPS providing municipal bylaw communication services for many decades has now reached a critical point of reconsideration for how we have the immersion of bylaw calls with non-emergency calls and how this is impacting our 911 response capacity. We have other regionalized service investments and connections to, as I mentioned, the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan. We provide collaborative and leading emergency management support, such as Alert Waterloo Region and other emergency management capacities, and also our connection to community partners for the Family Violence Project. All of these investments lead us to the consideration for the 2025 budget. The addition of the 18 officers that are proposed will primarily be to address frontline needs. That is our capacity to respond 24/7 to calls for service around the community of increasing complexity. Will also allow us modest increases in investigative services to address issues related to cybercrime, fraud backloads, and also processing of digital evidence in many forms. A very modest addition to our traffic service capability, and then the civilian support component that has been mentioned will allow us to supplement areas such as our special constables, areas of digital disclosure, and then a number of individual additions to administrative and support areas of the service. I will remind this council, it's sort of as a quiet undertaking just down the street, but we have one of the largest courts in the province of Ontario. It is increasingly a regional hub for court activity, and our constant communication with the judiciary and the court staff of the province there is something to continue to pay attention to as we have now resumed pre-pandemic levels of court activity. We have the transfer of individuals to and from that facility on an everyday basis, and that is putting incredible needs upon our special constable services and professional staff there who work in conjunction with the staff provincially and locally within that facility. So in closing, I do want to pay notice to our connections to the community. Within our equity, diversity, and inclusion plan, our pillar of what we refer to as total community engagement continues to bear fruit and to allow us the relationship building capacity and the trust building capacity that is crucial to our work. We will never turn down an opportunity to engage, to celebrate, to join, and to learn from the community that we serve. And this is an immense commitment of loyalty to our citizens. Just some metrics of interest. Those of you around this council will be familiar with a survey done, I believe it was 2 years ago now by Wellbeing Waterloo Region. Police were deemed to be amongst the top most trusted institutions within Waterloo Region. Immigration Partnership Waterloo Region in both 2021 and 2023, surveying all newcomers within our region who are immersing themselves in a new way of life with new services and within Canada, within Waterloo Region, have polled consistently police as a trusted institution amongst the highest in this region. And last year, also in November 2023, independent national surveys in Leger Canada and StatsCan held police to be the most trusted public institution in Canada. In closing, I do want to just pay attention to the state of our society, the state of all the complex needs and the balance of our investments over time. And none of this is lost on us, the challenges that this council and all governors face in trying to find the right balance to meet the needs and the expectations of the community that we serve. You will see throughout the course of this presentation and the material provided that the vast majority of our duties are legislated. And that is the level of adequate and effective service delivery for policing at a standard in which, with the new Community Safety and Policing Act, seeks to standardize how policing is enacted in every community so that the core duties of preservation of life, crime prevention, enforcement of our laws, maintaining the public peace, emergency response, and providing assistance to victims is the same for all residents in every community across our province. We are proud to uphold the service mission that is upholding public trust, confidence, safety, and community well-being through police service excellence. And we are seeking to ensure that we are doing our role in providing a balance in all the pressures that we are facing as a collective. We are seeking to grow with the pace and the complexity of our vibrant community, and we're very proud of the work that our members do 24/7, 365. This concludes our presentation. Look forward to respectful engagement and dialogue. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief, and to your team. We appreciate everything you and your members do to keep our community safe. And with that, I'll head over to questions from our colleagues. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you, Chief Kroll, for coming today. I appreciate the very thorough presentation and the accompanying report. Even though it came in later than expected yesterday, it was really great to read. My first question is around the cost of benefits. And potentially Ms. Hand could help you with this, but I think there is some discontent in the community around spending 2.8% of the police budget on extended benefits, and I believe that even extends to retired officers getting things like private hospital rooms. Could you speak to the necessity of that, or why that's happening, please?
Sure, thank you. And I am aware that there was a news item over the weekend that spoke to this, and I believe some information about the legacy and projected costs and time has come into the focus of this council as well. So I will start with the response, and then I'll call upon Kirsten Hand to speak to some of the details. At the highest level, though, I would say that we're talking about benefits negotiated through freely negotiated collective bargaining over time, which is in line with industry standards. And as a backdrop to the work that our members face, the trauma exposure to an average first responder, but police specifically, is upwards of 170 to 200 significant trauma exposures over time, as compared to the average citizen that faces approximately 3 to 4 in their lifetime. And the benefits to our members are necessary during the course of their career and into their retirement as well, because of the cascading mental health and physical needs and that we and other first responders face. So from a cost standpoint, I will call upon Kirsten Hand to address some of the details related to our benefits. But I just want to make that plain that these are difficult jobs to do. And there is a reality that comes to bear when we talk about dollars and cents versus the realities that our members are facing every day.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
The only thing that I would add, most of our benefit cost increases, most industries have seen those similar cost increases. Like when I look at extended health cost and dental cost, et cetera, one of the ones that's specific to our industry would be WSIB, and that is driven predominantly, as the chief mentioned, to the type of work that our members do, as well as presumptive legislation and WSIB. I will note that our board did recognize from a couple aspects these cost of benefits over the last number of years, and that included grandparenting the lifetime benefits of retirees. I will note that that's medical only, not dental. They pay for their own dental. So that was grandparented out in 2021. And the other piece that I will note is that previously we did not have a long-term disability program. So that was also implemented in 2020. So there was a number of items that our board did recognize in terms of benefit cost and have actively done actions through bargaining to mitigate those.
Thank you for clarifying that. And Ms. Hand, don't go anywhere because I think the next one will also apply. So you noted that 99% of the service expense is legislated services and expenses. And so you also noted that it's difficult economic times, and I appreciate that we all in this room know that, and in the community we're feeling it as well. So if you could just speak to specific strategies you and or the board and or the entire force has taken to reduce the budget in these difficult times.
Definitely, through our review process, we did mitigate or reduce the budget before it came to you today by $5 million, or just over 2% on the operating budget perspective, and the capital $1.3 million. There was a lot of discussions internally as well in terms of what was the right FTE growth that we're able to achieve as well. So ensuring that we have a sustainable increase in FTEs within our budget year after year. You would have noted from that one chart, like there was years where we had no growth, and then a couple years where like a lot of growth, and that causes a lot of stress, not just to the budget, but stress to the system as well.
Yeah.
And we have seen that in the last, a couple of years ago, you can see a lot of people retiring because 30 years ago, there was a huge increase in hiring at that point. So, trying to make it sustainable and ensure that we have appropriate growth every year so we're not stressing the budget.
And thank you, Ms. Kent. And I just want to note for my colleagues, as we go into budget deliberations in the next week and we consider what to keep and what to cut and how to lower taxes, the report from WRPS indicates that WRPS spent $1.4 million this past year in law enforcement related to homelessness and mental health. And so when we talk about ways to save money for the taxpayer, I don't think that reducing the homelessness services are where to go. And in conclusion of my comments and questions today, I just want to say thank you for you and your team's commitment to ensure that every person in Waterloo region is safe and feels safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunick. Councillor James.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. Thank you for coming and presenting today.
Sorry,
Oh,
Councillor James.
did you miss someone?
Yeah, I made a mistake, and it's actually Councillor Fox
Okay,
that
all right.
had the hot hand on this one. So you will follow Councillor Fox. And so
You didn't have to say that. You could have just put me next, but that's okay. Thank you, Councillor James. One is on page 40 of the slideshow where it's got population growth versus officer staffing. There's just an asterisk in 2020. Why is the asterisk there? That was a tough one, eh?
You have sharp eyes. I'm just looking at the graph here for why there is an asterisk in 2020. I'll get you an answer, Councillor Fox.
No hurry, no hurry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make another comment. Is a long, long time ago, I worked in dispatch. And at that time, they had a huge hiring and then they didn't hire. And all of the new officers retired at exactly the same time. And so they went through the recruitment process. But the problem being, as it was explained to me back then, was you don't want a new officer on the streets on their own. You usually pair them with an experienced officer in the first year or two because they come into unique situations. And then also, as that's transitioning and happening, we're talking about, if you look at the increase in court times that they discussed today, that takes an officer out of the picture significantly, especially with the increases, which again causes greater overtime and such. So it's a constant balancing act they have to do day by day to meet the needs of our community. Those are just two comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor James.
Again,
thank you for your
repeat.
patience. My apologies.
Oh, good. Through you, Chair Harris, and as I was saying before, thank you for coming in and speaking to us. I do have a couple of questions for just clarification. So I know you're working towards becoming more proactive rather than reactive, and I definitely appreciate that. And I think we all understand that prevention and working towards identifying and addressing root causes is ultimately a better way to deliver service and programs of any kind. And I know you've said on various occasions a proactive approach is a more cost-effective way to deliver your services. So beyond CMHC Impact Program, is there any updates on changes the WRPS has or is making to develop and deliver more kind of proactive approach to your service? You can speak to that?
Sure. So I would draw continued attention to the community safety and well-being plan and just focusing on those priorities. So to reiterate, if we just look at mental health and addiction needs together, that is a focal area. We want to expand the capacity of what exists right now, the crisis call diversion program within that first triage source within dispatch. We have a mental health professional embedded there now seeking to divert at the source to any other mental health capacities within the region. We have the impact program, which is operating the bulk of the day, but we want to expand that to a 24-hour capacity, and in turn, turn over that to expertise whenever possible. I mentioned the alternative destination model, which is really an opportunity for ourselves, but mostly paramedic services, to divert non-emergent mental health crisis to alternative sources other than the hospital program. It is our hope through this pillar of addressing mental health needs together, we can join with the health sector locally and provincially to create new programs and new solutions that don't exist in our capacity now. And those include, and will be best served by non-police response models to mental health. And so that will require our innovation and our collective investment. I know that this council and the big city mayors and others have advocated for the continued addition of mental health and addictions response models. We can't do it alone. We stand as the only legislated entity or professional group that can currently apprehend under the Mental Health Act. And so when we receive a crisis call and we evaluate the capacity of who can respond based on the level of need, the level of crisis, and then that legislative commitment, oftentimes we stand as the only source of response. We would love there to be other opportunities for others to respond, again, along the lines of prevention and proactivity. When we talk to our paramedic colleagues, they have great capacity to expand their to preventative medicine, and good health care is good mental health care. And if we can save one call for service to any one of us from mental health space capacity, that's a plus to the community. So my simple answers to you as I point to the community safety wellbeing plan priority of addressing mental health needs, that table needs to come together to join with all of the mental health services and responders within our community to create those innovative capacities. Other communities are doing it across North America, and nothing is off the table from my standpoint in terms of what model could work in this region.
I just have one follow-up, Chair. And you kind of led me into it with the community safety well-being plan. So I noticed that you have, funding towards executive leadership. That's a WRPS staffing that would be involved in that? And then I guess just a couple on, because you mentioned things like partnership, where does, what's being done locally in terms of the missing, murdered and Indigenous women and girls? I know you've mentioned that in the report. So just speak to that a little bit, expand on that executive leadership, and what does that mean? Is that a position out of WRPS? Is there not already partnerships going on there? Again, kind of working locally with those partnerships with missing, murdered and Indigenous women and girls.
So we are now, with those four focal areas under the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, providing in-kind capacity. So we have one purely dedicated leader, Inspector Aaron Mathias, who is working with our regional partners on that planning. We are seeking within this budget year to provide financial support for leadership, governance, and structural support to the plan, recognizing that there are extensive needs within your purview at the regional council budget for other needs. And then at every one of those action tables that are forming around combating hate, mental health, intimate partner, gender-based violence, we have our professionals working in collaboration across those tables. There's a lot of in-kind support seeking to provide that collaborative table model to address those needs. Your second question about the component of that category of intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, I believe stands as a work in progress. We have a reconciliation action plan at WRPS. We are at the table with the Waterloo Region Reconciliation Action Group as well, as a partner to that entity, and we're looking to address the calls for action systematically. So that means that there's many facets of our work related to missing persons, related to intimate partner violence, related to gender-based violence, and then our homicide, major crime investigative work that has clear through lines for how we address these needs of missing, murdered Indigenous women and the legacy of that. So that work is ongoing and active, and that'll continue to emerge and to evolve as that action table takes shape.
Thank you, Chair. I'll cue back in. I have some more questions.
Councilor Deutschman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Harris. Thank you, Chief, for coming in, and thank you to everyone else that's here today. I can truly appreciate the vast array of work, Chief, that you have to oversee, the various departments, the responsibilities, the issues that you have to deal with. And one observation I had, before I get to my question, was kind of similar to what Councillor James was, I think, alluding to, was when we start to see so many things like in page 16 and page 30 of your slide, talking about the community safety and well-being plan and the different areas that you're getting into, the one question, or not a question, but the thought that comes to my mind is it's one funder and many operators. And so my concern is, how much are we doing, how much are you doing, and is there that coordination that we need? That's not a question, but it's just an observation going forward. So just a concern that I have, that I might want to have our staff just look at that and see, is there duplication happening in our community and that we're paying for that duplication? That's just the one concern. One of the things, Chief, is you don't show, your civilian contingent when you talk about officers here. And as you know, we have one of the highest civilian contingents per population of all the forces. And when you talk about Durham, Halton, Niagara Region, for example, our combined officer-civilian contingent is comparable in that regard. And we have civilians that do more work than, do certain work that officers in other services would do as well. So we expand the use of civilians that way. The question, though, that I have, the first question I have deals with special constables. And you referenced the KPMG report earlier. And one of the recommendations in the KPMG report with respect to special constables was to consider the future use of special constables for lower risk activities that don't require a sworn officer. And they highlighted taking reports on low priority calls, traffic management, and securing crime scenes. And KPMG said that there would be no implementation costs or ongoing costs for that. It would require approval, and they gave the Brantford example, and they showed Brantford actually did that with their special constables, and it outlined the different legislation that they sought approval from the province for expanded work. And KPMG said the savings associated with the recommendation would offset future hiring requirements for constables. So the question, Chief, is WRPS considering an expanded role for special constables along the lines of the recommendation of the KPMG report, and what steps have been taken in that regard?
Thank you. Your initial comments about duplication and so on, I think is worthy of a discussion. When it comes to the community safety and well-being plan, I just want to ensure that everyone's aware that the roots of the community safety and well-being plan speak to the mandate, and the roots are within the Community Safety and Policing Act. And so it is a core responsibility for our service to be well immersed in the development and the provisions of that plan. And we simply want to lead at whatever requirement is necessary to advance that work, because it will directly impact those categories that we've discussed. The landscape of special constables, I would say, is an evolution right now. Yeah, you mentioned that our commitment to civilianization over time has been one of our hallmarks of a commitment to innovation. And so I think we should be proud as a region as we have looked at every single time that we have any staff turnover within the organization. We stop and question the capacity, the need, the legislative responsibilities. And if we can look at a civilianizing capacity, that is the undertaking that Director Kirsten Hand mentioned when we look at those capacities. I also mentioned earlier about part of the reason for a high level of civilianization of special constables is how we deploy special constables within the region now. A large regional provincial courthouse requires that capacity, and it is commensurate to our prisoner care and control facility as well at Central Division, which serves the entire region. So currently, our special constables provide that prisoner care and control capacity and support for the provincial courthouse. We also have, in the last number of years, migrated special constable duties to involve cybercrime investigations, as well as forensic identification techs. We are watching the landscape of special constable compensation, scope of duties, changes within the Community Safety and Policing Act. We are looking at other jurisdictions such as London, York, and others that are looking to deploy them increasingly in frontline capacities. And we're also looking at everything from the scope of duties, potential dangers to be faced. And the report that you reference does provide a recommendation about the potential for officers to take those calls. And we're actively examining that capacity from what we call the frontline support unit capacity, which is online reporting, telephone reporting, and we expect there'll be a virtual reporting capacity in the future. It does require a certain level of expertise and a balance to that mix over time. I think I recall last year answering a similar question is to say there is a balance and a caution in terms of how we proceed with the use of special constables for frontline duties. And we're working with our association. We're looking at best practices across Canada, across Ontario. And that's an active recommendation that we have innovated in some ways with the use of special constables. And we will look to explore those avenues for an operational capacity, but also a fiscal responsibility capacity.
Okay, Chief. So hopefully we'll hear about some action in that regard, given your comments about civilianization, which is positive. Certainly, we would like to hear some positive news about actual steps being taken with respect to special constables. The second question I have is along the lines of the call diversion. And so I'm glad you commented on that. The impact team and the crisis call diversion. Took me a while to sort out the two, but I appreciate there are two there, and sometimes crisis call diversion calls get directed to impact or patrol. And that was one of the things I was looking at. I noted that, as you had said, in 2023, officers were attending 10 to 11 mentally ill calls per day, so it's about 3,800 calls per year, and 4 to 5 attempt suicide calls, 1,700 per year. So combined, that's around 5,500 per year. And your goal was to achieve a 20% diversion rate. Now you came close to that with respect to mentally ill calls, but not quite there with attempt suicide. And you weren't quite there consistently in 2023. And in 2024, the diversion rate has actually decreased. 13% for mental illness, 9% for attempt suicide. And I know you're aware Q3 of 2024, for some reason, that could be an anomaly with the drop in the calls because it's sort of been consistent around that 340 to 350 on average per quarter. But the other thing I noted with respect to the crisis call diversion program was that when I looked at a few markers like Q3 2023, Q4 2023, Q4 2024, and actually I noted in Q3 2023 and Q4 2023, it was approximately 55 calls for that quarter, but in Q4 it dropped down to 38 calls. And the success rate for the CCD is, I would say, phenomenal in terms of police involvement, right? I mean, it's average maybe 2 or 3 officer involvements in all of those calls. And my question is, I'd like to hear, is there some specific steps that you and WRPS are going to take to move more calls to impact and to CCD? I think that is a tremendous time saver, and not only on the cost of officers attending, but mental health as well, to deal with those sorts of situations.
So we're in total agreement about the efficiencies and our hopes and expectations for the growth of this program. This is an every day, every week, every month evaluation in terms of the criteria that is agreed upon with the Canadian Mental Health Association for what we can reasonably and responsibly divert. And that can be and just so everyone understands, when the call comes in and there's that evaluation of what response is required, is any response required by anybody? Can it be a follow-up? Is somebody already have relationships to mental health professionals that can be a follow-up? Can we divert to here 24/7 at the source? Can, as you point out, have an impact response or a co-response with police? That is the evaluation every day. So it's determinant upon the type of call that's received. The evaluation has been consistent. We just have had that. We've not had the growth capacity in that realm that we think we would like to see. We are monitoring this program as it's being utilized by the Toronto Police Service, City of Toronto, the Ontario Provincial Police, and they are having similar challenges with this specific program because the criteria for danger, for the requirement of who can respond, is simply not allowing us to grow that diversionary capacity. But we're committed to it. I mentioned earlier that currently the impact program is not operating 24/7. We have had successive applications to the province, co-applications with Canadian Mental Health Association to take us to a 24/7 capacity. We would like to see a growth and a stabilization of that staffing capacity. We have those mental health professionals working in our divisions. Our Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo We're immersed in the work. We're talking about the efficiencies of our response. And the advocacy that has been made locally about enhanced and additional mental health capacities within our region would assist, this program, but others to flourish and to grow. And it is our hope that we can continue to grow and divert. So it's not just a police decision-making issue. This is a collaborative model that is to our benefit and to everyone's benefit to grow and to have expand.
So just on that point, and I'm going to go back in the queue in a moment, Chair Harris, but just on that point, maybe that's something that councillors should be considering when they're attending AMO, for example, and advocating with ministers to increase funding for programs like Impact. And maybe, Chief, next time, I think you've attended some of those meetings too, to coordinate with the chair and others who are attending to see about advocating for more investment in that program. I think that's a tremendous program. Now, CCD is only a phone call. It's not a person actually going. It's a diversion through the call. Impact is the one where it's co-officer and mental health professional, right? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Chief, for your presentation. You've clearly shown the challenges that police face daily, and I appreciate all you and your staff and everyone is doing. I did have some concerns about benefits, but I think you've answered those. I just think perhaps it's the lifetime benefits we maybe need to trim. I'm glad that dental is not included, and I see that the benefits that an active officer needs may be different than a retired officer. So that's maybe something to look at or continue to look at. Do you have any thoughts on why, when I looked at that hate crime has increased so much from the 2022, I guess, or 2023 to 24 has increased? Any thoughts about what we can do about it?
So thank you, and it's mutual concerns in terms of the trends that we're seeing, and we're not alone. I can tell you, I and others, we're connected to networks of police and public safety professionals across the province and across Canada. So there's a couple factors. There's no doubt that the polarization of our society broadly is playing out. We can see that globally, within North America, within Canada, and then drilling down to locally, is there are sentiments in terms of anti-newcomer, anti-immigrant. We start to drill into the data in terms of who is being targeted, whether it's non-violent offenses or some of those criminal offenses that are violent in nature. We have clear delineations in terms of who's being targeted. Anti-Black racism is the predominant category in all of them. And that is a call to action for us to pay attention to exactly the types of activities that are playing out. There's other categories of racial identity, South Asian, and so on, that are within that same category of response. When we look at the polarized dynamics of sexual identity and the politics regarding policies across North America, we can see that as the second highest category of individuals targeted. And then the third highest category is regarding religious identity. And that, for the police reported data within our region, 78% of those targeted for religious adherence or identity is related to the Jewish population, followed by Islamophobic actions. So this is my continued assertion today as we have a tremendous opportunity to do a few things together. That is to mobilize and to unify our community resources, to create funnels of reporting that allow us to analyze precisely who and what is being targeted, what are the actions, what are our areas to intervene, to create solutions to support those who have been victimized through a variety of activities. How do we create region-wide educational interventions that can meet, from a curriculum standpoint and then a public education standpoint, the needs of our community? And then I also mentioned the hate crime and extremism role that we play in coordination, collaboration with others. There are roots of extremism that have always existed that are starting to have become emboldened over the past number of years. And so I can tell you that There is provincial attention upon our investigative capacity to tackle this from a law enforcement perspective, but also the most important thing will be reaching the current and the future generations to set expectations for how we exist together. My greatest concern, and I know it is shared around this table, is knowing that we're living in amongst the fastest growing communities in Canada, rapidly diversifying. This, as one example of a problem that we face collectively, will continue to amplify. And there's concern that if we don't come together to create the solutions that will work and that will matter and that will disrupt the trends that we are seeing, we can predictably anticipate the same outcomes on the trajectory on which we stand today.
Thank you. One thing I did notice or wanted to commend you is at the badge ceremony, that the quality of the new officers and some of the diversity that you're attempting to, of experience and race, that you're getting on your force, I think, can help. And my other great concern always is the huge number of intimate partner violence calls. And could you talk a bit more about the proactive work you're doing there?
So I thank you for that. And you're all always welcome to join any of our badge ceremonies. They're now 4 times a year. And we look forward to, in January to joining the community in North Dumfries for the next badge ceremony. So I can tell you intimate partner violence is this recurring trend that we've seen over time. I noted that 6,200 calls annually has been the trend, about over 6,000 for the past number of years. There's a silver lining to do with the reporting that exists right now. If we talk to our community partners who work in the space of intimate partner violence and gender-based violence, they will confirm that they believe there are many reports that are not coming to police, that they will go to those supportive agencies, and that's the collaborative model that we've had for since 2006 with the Family Violence Project. So on 2 fronts to answer your question, the partners are at the table trying to envision the next evolution of the Family Violence Project in terms of the model, the partners, the scope of responsibilities, and how do we support people in that wraparound capacity in the best way. We are just but one crucial partner there. Where we can continue to make a difference is on what we call the early intervention. So we know that recurring challenges within relationships are on that cycle of violence and cycle of predictable behavior. When we can intervene through our capacity, but with our partners on those who are involved in cycles of stress of all kinds, financial stress, relationship stress, needing just life supports in many ways, and we can provide that early intervention capacity for those repeated cases, we know that we can reduce and help support people in new ways to get them to the place where there's stability or a crucial intervention in a toxic relationship. So as a category, the early intervention work is an area we need to grow. It moves us to the prevention sphere. It allows us to find new capacities. I'll also just signify, though, as we continue to grow and diversify, there are newcomers to this community and this country that do not have the faith and trust in the institutions that we have right now. Language, cultural barriers, the acceptance of violence within the home, and then the fear of all the challenges that anyone would face in a violent or abusive relationship are compounded when you add that layer of diversity on top. And so that is the crucial call to action when it comes to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan and to that category.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Thanks, Chief Crowell, and your colleagues are here, and your colleagues that are here, and the entire service for the work you're doing and keeping our region safe. Congratulations on some of the successes, road safety, diversion program. It's great to see some of those initiatives that are finally having some positive results. Unfortunately, other items such as hate crimes, that take incredible toll on individuals and resources are not seeing the success rate. And I think here at the region, we struggle with the same kind of a thing with our homelessness population, where the numbers are going in the wrong direction. And you have to keep working and working and working at that. So thank you for what's happening there. We were all at a conference last week at the Waterloo Public Library, or Kitchener Public Library. And if I'm correct, we were told that Waterloo region is the fastest growing multicultural community in Ontario. Did I hear that correctly?
It was a report last year, and it was just one source that identified our region as the most diverse municipality in Canada. Which
So
again, we can provide the link to that source.
Which again presents some issues for us in terms of, two questions for starters. The unfunded reserve fund for liabilities, there's been conversation about that the last couple of years. I'm wondering what the status of that would be, what progress you might be making on that.
Sure. Happy to call upon Kirsten Hand just to provide the level of subject matter expertise, and happy to supplement any of the commentary. Thank you.
So the unfunded liabilities, there was two of them essentially a couple of years ago. The first one was the sick leave reserve. The board did make actions through collective bargaining to grandparent that as of, I think it was employees hired as of 2005. So there's been actions essentially to mitigate that going forward. We started to contribute towards that reserve in 2024, and we continue to do so to ensure that the amount of money in that reserve better covers off the liability associated with that item. The other piece is the future employee benefits liability, and that relates to predominantly retiree benefits. And again, the board made actions through collective bargaining to grandparent that in 2021 to mitigate it going forward. But as well, in 2024 budget, we started contributing towards a new reserve to plan to contribute to that reserve to better match liabilities going forward as well. So those have been a couple actions that we have taken to mitigate some of those unfunded liabilities.
Okay, thank you. The other question, or the second question for now would be, I think it was on page 33 or something like that. There was a reference to a partnership with Guelph or Wellington in terms of the diversion program. And I'm wondering, I think you said there was an application, so I'm wondering if that was successful and how that's working.
So there's an annual, in our last police service board report we provided, and I don't expect that you have time to digest our package, let alone your own material, but we provided a list of all the granting opportunity. There's a significant number of grants that fund our work and partnership work as well. And so the mental health impact program, which is that co-response model with the Canadian mental health professionals, is only funded, to about 18 hours a day currently. We want to expand that to 24 hours a day. And because we're part of the Waterloo-Wellington sort of health system, in the Canadian Mental Health Association jurisdiction, we have done a joint application. So the same Canadian Mental Health Association covers Guelph, Wellington, and Waterloo region. And so our appeal in the grant application was to actually share staff across both jurisdictions. We think this was a unique and innovative way to cover some of the challenges. If the leadership we're speaking to today, I think they would express concern of the level of continued sustainability of their funding. We are hopeful, but are still waiting to hear about whether that application will be granted that will allow us to stabilize, but also grow our capacity to 24/7. And the plan would be to, if enacted, would be to share the same pool of professional staff from the Canadian Mental Health Association from the Guelph and Wellington area to our Waterloo region capacities as well.
And so would the diversion locations be shared between the region, Wellington, Guelph as well?
So I believe we deploy in the same way. It's like a co-response model. So we have staff that start and end their day in our local police stations. So in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, they attend briefings with our officers to share, the details about responding. and then they're called out and they co-respond with our officers in time. So I imagine that would be the continuation of that model, and we're just simply looking to extend the hours at which they're staffed.
Yeah, well, I hope that's successful. It seems like a good way of sharing resources. And the other question would be the 401 corridor continues to be a challenge, I'm assuming. The numbers are going up rather than down.
Yeah, I mean, from a traffic standpoint, there's that volume. I mean, in this forum, never want to be alarmist. Follow the data, follow the facts, and follow the news as it's presented. If anyone have seen the news the past couple of weeks, the GTA, including Hamilton, is signaling the highest level of gun violence that they've seen in a number of years. Organized crime, gang violence spilling out into the streets. And if you look at Hamilton, which is a bordering partner, they've had a record number of violent shootings within their region. So we're not immune to these trends and partnerships in terms of how we investigate together, how we respond together, and what the impacts are on our community. We're a vibrant location, an opportunity for organized crime. Drug trafficking is at the root and the heart of many of our challenges. The opioid epidemic in many forms continues to plague not only the health of our community, but also the opportunity for organized crime to flourish. And there's many streams of conversation to have there, but the access point to young people who are attending post-secondary institutions within our region, and then the quick access to the 401 and the highway system here for crimes of opportunity such as vehicle thefts, robberies, and crimes such as that are an opportunity that we're doing our very best to work not only locally but also with the Ontario Provincial Police and other intelligence and public safety capacities right across the GTA. We're all facing the same issues and we're dealing with the same people involved in the same activity. So it's a collaborative police response across this part of Ontario.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Thank you, Chief. You've already sort of amplified one of the things I wanted to talk about. There's a saying, and this is partly in reaction to Councillor Deutschman's asking if there's duplication and if you come with us to Roma and AMO, which you do come. There's a saying that if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a group. And I'd have to tell you that I think WRPS has for a very long time practiced that. And the integrated crisis center that the chief has done such a good job of amplifying is recently as yesterday, a group of us were in Queen's Park discussing this with Minister Tabolo and with the Premier and with the Minister of Health, Sylvia Jones, to say we do need that funding for 24/7. A lot of this funding since July has been cobbled off the side of people's desks, and not only is WRPS very supportive of this, so are our paramedics. And appreciate the fact that when somebody can go to a low, almost no barrier alternative setting or be taken there by the police or the paramedics, they then stay there and the paramedics and the police can go on servicing the rest of the needs of the community. And it's staff who are in the alternative crisis center that would take them to an emergency department if that was deemed to be the most appropriate place for them. So it is working in conjunction with other authorities, and it is working much smarter. The chief and Inspector Matthias also came to AMO when we talked about the community safety and well-being, and it isn't duplication, it's leadership, and it's providing a cooperative, collaborative way to deal with these issues, which really are community-wide and much more expansive than just our community, as the chief has just pointed out. So I just wanted to sort of underscore the fact that so much of the trust that new Canadians or people who have had a really bad experience with healthcare or with services like the police, that is all built on relationships. And it seems like a bit of a throwaway at the end of the WRPS slide deck when it looks at all the places, but we all go to community events as elected officials. I can't think of one where WRPS is not there building those kind of bridges and that kind of trust. So I don't know, Chief, if you want to respond to that. I guess this is a little bit of a did you know?
Thank you, and you've clarified, sort of our role and our commitment to those collaborative efforts and the solutions we hope to continue to build in partnership. And I would just underscore, I mean, we simply cannot do the work that we do without building those relationships in peace times. We are invited to more events than we can sometimes sustain, in addition to our regular duties, but we've really adopted it as just an essential part of building that trust and that capacity. And we continue to learn and to be amazed by just the community that we serve. And so that is an ongoing commitment that I don't see changing. I will not put a plug for myself, but to amplify the work of our members, but the legacy of our service being committed to that in terms of the total immersion and to be at every table where we're invited with open arms. We strongly believe in the notion that every conversation can open a door. And ultimately, it's to building trust so that we can amplify our safety efforts, but also we start and end every call and every day asking who else can help. And we know that there are capacities that well eclipse what we're capable and what we're will be successful in doing. And so that is bringing people close and bringing people together at every opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, we are going to take a 10-minute recess. We are entering the second round of questions from colleagues. And obviously there was some discretion in the first round in terms of time, just to allow for some flexibility and a good back and forth in terms of questions and answers. When we come back, we will stick with the 5-minute maximum, and you'll be bumped to the bottom of the list. We have roughly an hour on the schedule, but whether we need to take that or not is up to you all. So 10 minutes back at 11, go into the second round. Thanks. go. Okay, colleagues, it is 11 o'clock. We will resume with questions from our colleagues. And with that, I'll go over to Councillor Hewnick for a second.
Thank you, Chair Harris, for the second round. Thank you, Chief Kroll, for sticking around and entertaining all thoughts and comments and questions. We really appreciate it. And so when I was running for office, I spoke at length about the need for policing to collaborate with mental health professionals and vice versa. And I know that you are behind the EMPACT team, and I know that they're doing good work, and I know that we're trying to increase their funding, and so hopefully CMHC can do that very soon. I'm wondering if we can just wax philosophical for the next 3 minutes or so, not more than 5, because Chair Harris will kill me. But I'm wondering if you know of any local, provincial, national, or international research that speaks to why there hasn't been or why there could be a 4th division of 911 being specifically dedicated to mental health emergency response. And if it takes more than 3 minutes, we can take this offline, but we'd love to hear.
So thank you. So, I mean, last year there was an addition to the emergency calls. There's now a capacity for people to call for mental health help on their own. So the 811 number allows people to call for that mental health capacity on their own. You know, I think that there are conversations that we need to be having provincially about the Mental Health Act as it currently exists, that puts a sole responsibility for apprehension and intervention, and then the marriage of the medical field utilizing police for apprehensions and for those facing crisis or inability to care for themselves or others solely at our hands. We would love to amplify the partnership in health or to amplify health on its own to take on capacities away from police. So there are a number of different models across North America and globally that match some of what we have for an impact program. There are other models that would allow non-police responders to be active in the community, to respond with, I would say, sort of the lower tier crisis response or a proactive response that we would fully support. And that's when I talk about us looking at a triage of multiple models verging from what we have right now to a non-police response. Those are the things we would like to develop. My caution and my encouragement, though, is we have to do it together because the systems have to be connected in a way that allows us to potentially jump from one level of urgency to a de-escalation in the response model. And so our advocacy is everybody at the table, system mapping, advocacy on joint funding and solutions and models that work together, and to allow us to have a spectrum of connected organizations, systems, and professionals addressing all needs.
Thank you. And just to underscore what you've just said, I would never advocate for complete separation of said services. I think collaboration is key. And so, but just the idea of having a 4th designate there would be decent, I think. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Harris. Councillor Wolf addressed some of what I was going to ask regarding the hate crimes and what are the trends you are seeing. And I want to, thank you for mentioning that, anti-Black racism is kind of is the highest amongst the trends of racism. I do think there's also a cultural nuance there when you're working with newcomers and the anti-Black racism that exists internationally that, we're navigating here as well. And recognizing that may impact also your officers as well. What I do want to say is that I hope to see that through the work with the community safety and well-being plan, that cultural nuance piece is being addressed, especially as you're building relationships with various groups in the community. And that's spoken about, because I do hear from many people about that cultural nuance where anti-Black racism is at play. Question I do have, do you track hate-motivated crimes that do not meet the requirements of of being a crime?
So absolutely, and this is very complex, and this is part of the the collective work for education for us all. So under the Criminal Code of Canada, there are only a certain number of offenses and small number that are actually determined to be hate crimes. So that's advocating for genocide and so on. So what we commonly refer to as hate crimes are really additions to other criminal offenses. It could be mischief, graffiti, assaults, threats, harassment, arson, those types of things, where they're determined to be hate crimes through that specific definition. Where we have work to do is to continue to identify hate-motivated incidents. So those could be circumstances where it could be a neighbor dispute, it could be an unkind word that doesn't meet the criminal threshold, and we are tracking those. What our hope is that we can amplify the capacities of all organizations across the community, the educational sector, the health sector, all organizations, community centers, and so on, and so that we have a collective idea of the number of incidents that are happening everywhere. What we are drawing attention to is when you hear statistics on hate crime reporting or hate-motivated incidents or hate-motivated crimes reported to police, that is the national statistical culmination of everything that comes in through us. We know through the advocacy work in the community, there's lots that is going unreported to police. And so we are tracking what we can. What we would like to do is to link all participating organizations into a funnel of unified reporting so that we can analyze it, so we can respond where we need to respond, and we can support people when it does not reach, say, a criminal threshold, which might have a resolution in the criminal justice center or system, but also to provide a myriad of resolutions. So one of the delegations we had through our budget process was from community justice initiatives, seeking to create a partnership or enhance the partnership that we have to look at resolutions, mediation for those circumstances where there's restorative justice capacity. Those are the types of partnerships that we need to continue to grow, because we have a funnel of response and solutions, but we need to amplify how we are connected to agencies that can do an equal and better job at resolving these issues and getting to the heart and the root causes of them.
Okay, hopefully there's support there with community justice initiatives. Just with your slide 35, you spoke about hate crimes locally, and Immigration Partnership reported that 81% have positive relations with the police. It just, in looking at data, and sometimes I think it's necessary to see kind of what does that other 19% represent, because those are the areas for improvement. So it would be good to see that aspect going forward, because it's very easy to highlight the positive number, but what are we missing with that 19%? Chair Harris, I just have another question, non-related. You've got crimes in an aggregated data format. I'm just conscious of the area townships and specific municipalities. Do you have the disaggregated data for what those trends look like? Because I think there's benefit in seeing kind of what are the trends throughout, if there's an increase per se in the townships, how is that being addressed? What types? I think sometimes we're lumping it all in one, and it's a regional police service, but also there's nuance within those area municipalities as well.
So certainly. So we report quarterly to the board and publicly on the breakdown of all of our what we call neighborhood policing capacities, which shows everything. It shows our call response times, crime trends locally, and then it's very, you've hit upon a very important point, is to understand that our townships are growing immensely, and there are no boundaries to the activity. So that data does exist. It's within the public sphere, and to any citizen listening, watching, and to any certainly community representative, we're happy to provide that directly to anybody. It is crucial. We will be making a reversion to a best practice we had before, is to have a dedicated rural leader, a sergeant, that will be a single point of contact to support the work that is existing in the rural townships. And we've started to, as of this week and the week before, to be present, holding town halls within Wilmot, it was New Dundee within the last couple of weeks, to continue to listen and to know how we can respond best to those localized needs that are different than the urban landscape. That is the majority of our response capacity, but we can't ignore the growing complexity within each township, and I'm glad that you raised it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Harris, I just want to sneak in one quick question. I know we're up for time. In terms of the municipal speed enforcement cameras, I want to hear from you kind of what are your thoughts? Does that assist with some of the work that that your officers are having to navigate? I know with the trends you have in here, speeding in that fatal 4, it's significantly high. So I would love to hear your kind of thoughts on municipal speed enforcement program, and if, you know, the ways in which it either complements the service and what your officers are navigating.
So in short, yes, we're in full support of the direction of this region. We think it's a crucial complement to the work that we do. I will advocate that it cannot replace our traffic enforcement capacities, because it does, those are highly specialized capacities where we're intervening, and there's major complexities when we have that face-to-face interaction, and we can determine other issues related to impaired driving, by alcohol, by drug, suspended driving capacities, dangerous driving. Like there's a lot more to those investigations, but the automated speed enforcement we think is a crucial component of total road safety efforts. And I mentioned road design, total community inputs on priority areas. And I think we're starting as a community to find our balance on it's not an easy conversation, but it's connecting all of our infrastructure so that it's complementary to facing the needs of growth, but also the complexity of our roadways. We want to see the continued growth of active transportation. You know, looking at the densification of our urban centers and beyond is looking at you know, that proliferation and growth of active transportation, and we need to complement that with municipal and regional automated speed enforcement program. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done, Chair Harris.
Councilor Deutschman.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Just want to add another saying to the mix for my good friend Chair Redmond. Too many cooks spoils the soup. And so the point I was trying to make was that if there's too many people overseeing a program, then the coordination is important for the taxpayers to make sure that we're not wasting money that way. Certainly, many hands makes the load light, and that's another saying that I support, and similar to what you had to say, and it was the point that I was making with the chief. Chief, you're a PhD graduate. I congratulate you for that. You understand the importance of data as a PhD. And the WRPS agendas contain large numbers of reports with detailed data. You have information, bar graphs, pie charts on a large number of items providing quarterly information. Things like mental health, alternative response, communication center activity, neighborhood policing, frontline call reduction strategies, WRPS intelligence notes, use of force, and financial variance reports. And today, we can see in the data you've presented, it's significant and comprehensive that you've provided to us. Yet, Chief, you decided to stop reporting on your personnel numbers. One of the important items that is reviewed when considering hiring additional staff, and you purposely stopped reporting these quarterly numbers. And Chief, you not only stopped providing the quarterly Human Resources Dashboard report, but you also purposefully removed the numbers from your quarterly financial variance reports. Those reports always contain staffing information, but this year they did not. So, Chief, this is a disturbing fact pattern. On this issue, you're moving in the direction of less information and less transparency. On the very issue that is the single largest point of contention as we review the budget and your request for more staffing. And I know that you've provided information in the supplemental at page 7, but Chief, that doesn't include any information about retirements and resignations, which for the past 2 years, on average per quarter, was 14 officers. And so, and last year too, Chief, you had said to us that you were going to be at full complement by the end of 2023. That was your commitment, but that didn't happen. And yet on this chart, you are claiming that you will be at full complement, but we have no information about the other items that you had included in your quarterly reports. And I do know, Chief, as well, interestingly, you're stating that you have 16 more civilians than authorized. And if I'm correct, you're still asking for 10 more civilians in the upcoming budget. So, Chief, despite my request for this information at your public meetings, in writing, from a regional councillor specifically asking for this information, you've refused to provide the details. And Chief, so my question is, why have you moved towards less transparency in reporting on WRPS staffing and hiring and continue to not disclose those numbers?
Thank you for your question. Just as a high-level comment, I take great issue with your characterization of much of what you've said. And I believe that we have been absolutely forthright in our ability to provide accurate and timely information to our board, to our public, and we have modernized our reporting practices. There's been a mischaracterization of our data points in the past, pulling random points in time, looking at our budgetary allocations throughout the year, including our staffing allocations. And what we have sought to do is to modernize and to streamline our reporting. I don't believe there's a single point that has been requested that we have not reported back through our supplementary package. That we do not report, we report monthly on the essential information from our human resources. We publish pictures, data, and descriptions of all of our hiring. And some of the language, Councillor Deutschman, that you've used here, less transparency, claiming, refused, disturbing. I believe these are uncalled characterizations for the work that we put in to reporting publicly with full transparency. And we may disagree on this point, but on behalf of our members and our professional staff, take great issue with your characterization of this. I believe there's been an undue depiction of our practices that has gone into the public sphere that has worked against our collective interests in serving the community. The facts bear themselves. We have reached our full authorized staffing. We report to the board on a regular basis. We have fulfilled our obligations to reach the staffing level which has been authorized, and we stand before you factually. So your characterization of our practices, I take great issue with.
So,
Okay, no, that's.
I can respond to that.
Nope, 5 minutes is up. I'm going to Councillor Huenick. You can come back in.
Okay.
We'll go
Thank
from there.
you, Chair Harris. And thank you, Chief Kroll, for still sticking around. I've said a couple of times that this is my last question. Now I really mean it. So one of the most important things that I've learned from the Budget Subcommittee is the importance of adequate staffing and relief rates in order to minimize the use of overtime in all regional services, because essentially that saves the taxpayer money over time, and we like saving the taxpayer money. And so I wanted to say that, and then the question of clarification that I have for you is not related to staffing, so sorry for that. That was a little soapbox. But the question that I have for you, am I correct that the report indicates that there were 18 speed-related fatalities in the past year? Or is it 14 or 18? The exact number is not actually that important, because even one would be too many. But I just want us to keep that in mind when we are debating the usefulness of speed cameras and safety zones and all of that. Anything that we can do to save a life. But 14 or 18 fatalities due to speeding is too many. So, sorry, there might not have been a question in there, but you can speak now if you like.
Thank you, and we would agree. I mean, we've adopted, as a community, the commitment to the Vision Zero, which is through the collaboration of our actions, through road design, through a commitment to sharing the tension points on unsafe road sort of avenues, and then through enforcement, and now with the addition of automated speed enforcement, it is our hope that we can reduce and eliminate any fatalities and any major incident collisions on our roadways. Yeah. And we want to continue to work in collaboration with municipalities and the region on that total collaborative vision with the automated speed enforcement. I think it will assist. The reason why we can continue to come back to the fatal four, which is speeding and aggressive driving, impaired driving, seatbelt use, and distracted driving, is because that is the consistent data locally, provincially, and nationally, leading to the highest levels of serious injury and death on the roadways. So we know that over time, with mobile phone access and infotainment systems within cars, distraction is at its highest level. To our dismay, impaired driving by alcohol and drug continues to be a major issue. It's a leading criminal cause of death within Canada that is preventable. And there's so many avenues for people to find alternative transportation within our community. And then speeding and aggressive driving and seatbelt use, I mean, those are continued adherence and enforcement avenues that we will continue to be devoted to.
Thank you for your time and your openness today. I'm truly done now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunick. Councillor Deutschman, we will go back. I know you've had your question, Chief's responded, so let's keep it to questions, because I believe you've had two rounds of questioning already, so let's just, stick with some questions and go from there. And I would encourage others, because we're on our third round for some of our colleagues, if those that have not asked one would like to chime in, we've got a bit of time. So I just want to make that point known, and I'll go to Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you. And Chief, I'm not going to belabor the last point. The facts speak for themselves. The data points are not all covered off, and it does show that you're 16 over with respect to civilians, that you're still asking for 10 more. My next question deals with overtime. And I just want to talk about overtime. I keep hearing from yourself and the board chair that you need more officers because of overtime issues, and you take the overtime number and divide it by salary to come up with the number of officers. But that, Chief, is a simplistic assessment of how to deal with the overtime issue. I grew up in a household where my parents worked in local factories, so I understand overtime in that setting. Come in on a Saturday or a Sunday, it's extra hours. But the cause or need for overtime is a different thing with policing. I mean, there will be times when officers are needed to come in, perhaps like St. Paddy's Day. Overtime arises when an officer is working on major crime, or an officer dealing with someone that's joyriding at the end of a shift. You can't punch a clock and pass that person on to someone else. So there are systemic issues that result in that. In fact, you budget for overtime. So the issue that we're concerned about is how much over your budgeted overtime are we dealing with? And I know, Chief, from 2013 to 2018, over that 6-year period, we had one sworn officer added. From 2019 to 2024, over that 6-year period, we've had 120 sworn officers and 60 civilians. And yet, when you look at overtime, and from what I could find from the information, in 2019, we added 48 sworn officers, and there was $1.9 million over budget, over the overtime budget. In 2020, with no officers added, the overtime budget was actually reduced to $1 million over. So the overage of the budget attributed, and that was attributed to a new shift schedule. And in 2021, again, with no officers added, that was reduced further to $804,000 over budget. Yet in 2022, when we added 35 officers, now we were $2 million over overtime budget. In 2023, 19 officers were added. Now we ballooned to over $5 million over budget. And in 2024, we added 18 officers, and we've ballooned to, well, at Q3 was $4.5 million, or 19% over the same period. So, Chief, it's clear that adding officers is not the answer to reducing the overtime problem. I hear that response, but again, it's too simplistic a response to some issue that is far more complicated and needs deeper assessment and review by you and the board, Chief. So, you've added 120 officers over 6 years, another 60 civilians, and your overtime issue is out of control, and you haven't provided a satisfactory answer. So, Chief, will you commit to pausing the hiring of 18 new officers and 10 civilians so you and the board can better investigate why, in the past 2 years, despite adding 180 new staff over 6 years and budgeting for over $3.5 million in overtime, you're dealing with runaway overtime costs that exceed $5 million over and above budget?
So, Councillor Deutschman, I didn't hear you factoring growth, complexity, increased demands into any of those assertions.
That would be part of the assessment, Chief, I understand. So that's why I'm saying we need to have this. Go back to the charts you have where you have the line of officers and the population growth. Go back to it. Pull it up. And you can see that that's not simply the issue, because the staffing is almost identical from 19 to 2024 in terms of the average per pop.
Well, if the criticism is that we have a simplistic response or operationalization of our duties.
Whoa, no, I did not say simply. No. A point of order here. I did not say simplification of their operations. I said.
There's
point of clarification here.
I'm the chair here, and I'd cut your microphone off if I could. So, Councillor Deutschmann, this has been a cordial back and forth. You've asked your questions, you've made your comments, and we're allowing the chief to do the same. He has not interrupted you, and I don't expect you to interrupt him. Well, then you'll have a chance to chime in again. You're probably going to come back on the list, and I'll come back to you. But let's, please, colleagues, just question back and forth, because we're now getting into a lot of commentary and this, courtroom debate style thing here. This is a question and answer opportunity for council. So I'll let the chief answer the question. We're going to then go to Councillor Shantz and then Councillor Foxon, and I'm likely going to come back to you, and you can ask questions. But please, no interruptions for anyone.
Thank you. So what was presented on the slide was that 90% of our shifts require overtime resources to meet our minimum vacancies. So every hour of every day, we have vacant positions, which are zones within the communities across Waterloo Region, where we do not have adequate staffing provisions, where we need to fill those with overtime. So 90% of our overtime is filling basic minimal standards for frontline police response. I mentioned issues of not only those vacancies, but growth in demands, growth in complexity of our calls. There's infinite demands placed upon our members to not only respond in that frontline investigative capacity, but then to carry through the work that is required in an increasingly complex society. A call for service in this day and age has considerable complexities related to digital evidence, follow-ups required to resolve investigations of many kinds. We have missed lunches where officers are held over during the core essence of their shift, so it's not simply additional duties beyond their schedule hours. I've also signified the huge demands on operational deployments, such as our public gatherings and so on, as just some of the trends that we're seeing. I also mentioned earlier that there's an onboarding capacity with the hiring. So just because we've hired somebody in a certain month, it takes months and months for them to be fully operationalized. So what I've said is that we believe that as we stabilize our staffing and we onboard people to a level that will allow us to address these needs, we hope to stabilize and reduce overtime over time. And that is a commitment that we believe is reasonable. We cannot continue to be operating in this fashion. As I've mentioned, it's not fiscally or from a wellness standpoint a way that we need or want to be operating moving forward.
So just to follow up then, you note that you're 16 over with respect to civilians.
That is the current authorized staffing. But
and you're asking for 10 more.
So this is the challenge that in this forum we've been in before, is arbitrary points in the year taken as the totality of either our fiscal settling of our accounts or our staffing, because we often hire in batches of officers. So you can pick one point where we're over, one point where we're under, and there's a stabilization that occurs over time.
Just to clarify, Chair.
We're going to move on to Councillor.
It's Q4 2024. You know what I'm talking about, your supplemental report, page 7. And
Councillor Deutschmann, I apologize, colleagues. I'm trying to manage, this. So, Councillor Deutschmann, appreciate it. Your time's run out. I'm going to Councillor Shantz, then to Councillor Fox, and you can come back to the queue, okay? Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and thank you to Chief and the deputies and other staff who are here, and to Ian for chairing the board who oversees the work of the Waterloo Region Police Service. And
We meet monthly, we go over reports, we look at the operations. We don't direct the chief on how to run the service, and neither does this board. And so the details are the details, and I appreciate the questions of my colleagues to understand and get a good handle on how the police operate. I know one of the first slides that says the business plan has four areas that concern safety, connections, members, and resources. And this community asks for more in the way of safety. Crime is getting more complex, as the chief has said. And the service works with our social agencies in ways that have already been identified. I note also, and so I'll form a question for the chair. We've talked about overtime, and I think that our overtime amounts to 66 FTE, if I'm not mistaken. I would also note that there was a slide that showed $338, I think, was the cost per household for police services, which is third lowest in the province. So how the things are managed is being done very well. So I guess, Chief, can you remind us again about the effects of the overtime, once again, in terms of member well-being and also the overall management?
Sure. So we have, to my time in the service, our best metrics available to monitor on a daily, weekly basis, an hourly basis in terms of the overtime requirements. So we have a real-time operations center, which is looking at every zone, every corner of the region to look at the needs of the day. We've adopted a model to allow for any absences to be covered in real time, for us to shift resources around the region as situations emerge. And if call-out is required or to fill those minimum staffing levels, that's part of it. It was remarked that there's always been an accounting for expected overtime. But the overtime overages that we have shown and displayed are trends that concern us equally. Not just from a fiscal standpoint, but also from a member wellness standpoint, is to say we are on the backs of our officers' participation in those extra hours, filling minimum standard requirements. And from a wellness perspective, this has a cumulative impact over time on burnout. We are not unique. I think you would have the equivalent situation in healthcare, where we have minimum standards being met every day to meet increasing demands. But I just would draw upon those increasing demands as part of the complexity of the landscape that we're in. As we grow, so to do the calls for service, we're seeking to innovate, to modernize in any capacity imaginable, but we still continue to have a cascading of 911 calls for service, non-emergency calls, and those longer-term complex investigations. So we will continue to question and to scrutinize every single hour of overtime within our capacity, and we are hopeful that as we stabilize and smooth our staffing landscape, that over time this will be reduced. I will remark upon the question that was asked about the staffing. We have other vacancies of consideration as well, such as parental and maternity leave. And so that is one component of our communication center, administrative support, and other areas where if somebody is going to be absent for a period of time, whether it's 6 to 18 months, that is a requirement for our hiring to account for that. So it's not only in the overtime hours, but also within the backfilling that's required. So that accounts for some of the considerations that we have, and we will continue to report to the board on our success at stemming the tide and mitigating any of these overtime staff pressure issues.
I know my time is up. If I can, it's my only time speaking, and I know some of my colleagues have taken extra. Can I indulge one more question?
One more question, we'll move on to Councillor Foxon.
Thank you. Chief, could you also speak to how the increase in major crimes and organized crime have increased the demands on the service compared to frontline versus investigative?
So when I describe our service to new audiences, I mean, I often describe that if you take our roughly 848 officers, you can almost split them in half. Half of them you would see deployed in the community, in police cruisers, serving in many capacities, traffic frontline response. Almost the other half, give or take, are those investigative officers doing major crimes, investigative work, intelligence-driven work on those detective teams as well. And I've mentioned the complexity of the second neighborhood, which is sort of the cybersphere. None of us are untouched every day by the scams, the pressures, sort of the total attacks on our systems. I believe this council has also been briefed on cybercrime threats of many kinds. So it was the first slide of sort of the crime data we displayed, is to say whether it's child exploitation, fraud, or just your everyday investigation now involves layers of digital analysis. We now have judicial authorizations that have not existed before in terms of production orders, search warrant capabilities, and then even when we obtain the information necessary, these are avenues that cause us pressure on the system. The organized crime landscape is a local, provincial, national, and international challenge. So if you just take one stream, whether it's the vehicle theft challenges that we face within Southern Ontario, those have linkages, globally. And we know that there is a cascade of issues. If we look at drug trafficking, these are global opportunities that come down to the grassroots level. And so the work that happens behind the scenes is not only with our local focus, but it's working with our collaborative partners to address organized crime in all its form. Even the hate crime and extremism collaborative that I mentioned as well is us linking with intelligence networks at every level to understand extremism, the organized capacities that exist. One other linkage that I touched upon, though, is the concerning trend that I spoke about in June, is young people being manipulated and utilized by organized crime groups to carry out robberies, car thefts. We just arrested an individual last week, a young person, for a homicide investigation, murder for hire. And this is the type of challenges that we're facing as a community, where organized crimes are increasingly seeing the opportunity with young people to carry out the highest level of violence and offenses in our community. So that is a local WRPS solution, and we work with so many intelligence and public safety partners across the province to disrupt and intervene in any capacity that we can.
Can I invite just one comment and then I'm done? And that is, I've been on the board for 6 years, and anecdotally, I've seen a change in the types of crime that the service is dealing with. And that's just seeing board reports and that sort of thing. So it is changing. I'm done.
Councillor Foxon.
Thank you, and through the chair. Councillor Deutschman wants to sort of be the advocate for the people that are concerned about the police budget. And I don't dissuade him from that. I just ask that aggression, it should not be around this table, that's all. And it was aggressive, in my opinion. Okay, as I tried to state before, over time, I was working for the police when they had overhired at one period and everybody retired at the same time. And so new recruits were going out into the field without an experienced officer with them. And so, overtime happens when situations such as court time and an officer is taken into the court system, going and extending past their time allotment because they're on a case. But I want to compare it to a very simplistic example. I have to do my budget. I have to budget for snow clearing. I don't know what the hell to budget for. you know, and it's a guessing game. So you take your past stats, you do the best you can, and you try and mitigate it against the recruits that will be coming fully into the field. But it's a guessing game because as you saw the stats in crime, the type of crimes you're dealing with. And now I get those reports from David about a monthly or weekly about the crimes that are happening in Waterloo Region and what's going on. And I really appreciate all you do. And I know that overtime is a nightmare. It's a nightmare for all of us that deal with unforeseen circumstances. And that's exactly what crime is. It's an unforeseen circumstance that impacts our budgets and our cost if we believe that policing is needed. If we don't believe policing is needed, and then there'll be a huge outcry from the public. I wish we could see the number of lives you touched in the last 2024 and 2024. They would be a massive number. And also the unique crimes you deal with and the horrendous situations you're involved in. So I get it. I get the overtime. It's not something you can predict. There's not a formula for it. And it's a wish and a prayer. And I think we have to understand that. If they didn't have to have overtime, I don't think they'd want it. I mean, it's not something they want. It's something that happens. Hiring new officers is not the result. Decreasing crime is the result of ending overtime, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. And in some of your numbers where the crimes went down, I congratulate you, because that took officers away from those things to do the duties you have to do today. And I'm sorry for the types of crimes you're dealing with today. You look at human trafficking, you look at the other serious crimes. They're in a situation, I can't imagine our lives without you. And I truly do thank you. And I know you can't predict overtime, but you do the best you can, just like snow plowing, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that. Thank you.
Okay. Chief, if you wanted to respond to any of that, or?
I appreciate the sentiments, and on behalf of our members, you know, the gratitude that is shared and the burden that we willingly take on behalf of the community is something we're proud to do, and you know, none of us are unassuming about the challenges and the complexities. I just want to reinforce that we apply a management, supervisory, and fiscal prudence lens, you know, to every hour of every day and every dollar spent, and we're up for every uncomfortable conversation about it. Every citizen, you know, should understand and expect that every aspect of our business and the service we provide is scrutinized to the highest order. That includes overtime, that includes staffing. And so none of this is unwelcome, and we appreciate the support that we receive, but the work to improve and to optimize is a complex balancing act, but it's never done. We don't claim to be perfect. We're striving for excellence in every capacity, and that includes the professionalization of how we carry out the business, and very proud of the members that do it. Thank you.
Councillor James.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just have one other question, and again, centering on the community safety well-being, because again, looking at your data, hate crimes are the second highest increase compared to shooting, and I would hope that they're not correlated in that. But in terms of the community safety well-being, is there provincial funding that supports this initiative as well? As I know this is something that the province supports. Is there funding that's provided to you all from the province for these initiatives?
So the answer is no. Essentially, it's a mandate within the Community Safety and Policing Act that every municipality create a plan, report on it publicly to identify local priorities, but it's up to all of us to identify what those priorities are and how we will come together to tackle them. You know, I have the privilege of connecting with police leaders across the province. I would point to Halton Region, Peel Region, Durham, City of Toronto, that have robust, fully actualized plans with multiple action tables. We've identified 4 action tables. Some of these municipalities have 14, 15, highly functioning, highly coordinated fiscal investments, all municipalities, providing in-kind support, providing financial support in ways that are possible. Those are communities that have a highly functional environment in this space.
Okay, so you're part of this, and there's a collaborative, I think, with our community safety well-being. I'm just conscious again with mentioning kind of Peel in those other areas where I know there's been actionables to come from that, the investment that's also needed. I am deeply concerned about the hate crime, the incidences that are happening in this community, and even with the mental health and wellness and intimate partner violence that is increasing. It's incredibly, incredibly troubling to see the way this is going in this community. So I wanted to ask to see if there was funding, because I think that's another opportunity, and I don't know if this was part of the conversation yesterday, for investment from the province to support the community safety well-being through our partners as well.
So I can just say that there are streams of collaboration and advocacy and funding applications that are in and active for what is now known as the Family Violence Project. So there is funding available that we have jointly sought for the Family Violence Project to address intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, and so on. We do have support from Solicitor General for the HICIT, the Hate Crime Extremism Investigative Team. And then we've talked, about the mental health capacity funding. So there's no direct funding for these plans and programs from the province. It's a framework for community models to work together and to really bring us to sort of force collaboration and best in practice. But there's no core funding for the plans themselves. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was sitting here looking at the lineup of speakers, and I think my colleagues, I think we all understand this, is that a number of the issues around reporting or the quarterly reports or the presentation today are all board approved. It is not arbitrarily decided by the police chief. He's here as a messenger on behalf of the board in terms of the intricacies of policing. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And I think it's important. I think today especially has been well documented in terms of clarity, the straightforwardness of what's happening. And I think if anybody here around the table has further issues, concerns, or questions about how things are evolving at the Police Services Board, it's simply a matter of simply talking to Mr. McLean, who's sitting in the audience. Be happy to talk to anybody and clarify the responsibilities of the board with regards to decisions on a number of matters, including what's being said today and the quarterly and yearly reporting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you. I'd like, from the supplemental information package, page 7 or page 8, I think it's slide 9 or page 8, it says 9 of something. The issue with respect to overtime is not that there is, there's going to be overtime. You will not be able to get away from having overtime in policing. The issue here is that when you budget $3.5 million and you spend $8.5 million, and then the next year you budget $3.5 million again and you spend $8.5 million. That's the concern, is the overage that we're talking about. But Chief, I just want to go to the next page on that slide. So, Chief, you talk about point in time and you say, pick and choose a point in time. So stop there. So you show that, you tell us that you're going to have your full complement with respect to staffing, which is a point in time. If you'll see on the chart, it says 0. That's one point in time. When I look at the civilian staffing levels, I see 3 points in time on that chart in front of you. It shows 16 Q4, 16 Q3, and plus 4 Q2. So it's not a matter of picking and choosing. The facts are right there, and these are your facts, Chief, that you've presented to us. So my question, Chief, is can you commit to not adding 10 civilians because you don't need them? You have 16. You've consistently shown 16 for 2 quarters.
So I sought to answer that in a previous response. So the 16 that are showing here over account for necessary hiring to cover parental leave for essential positions. So that is the allocation where we've had to overhire, and it shows up statistically in these categories, and then that balances out when members return back to work. And that is the cycling of our attrition over the course of the year. So your assertion that these civilian members are not required because of this, I disagree with. It's not accurate. We've taken a very prudent approach to looking at not only our uniform staffing, but our commitment to civilianization and the necessary additions of civilian staff over time. And they're broken down within the material. I've spoken about the modest investment of 4 special constables, 3 in digital disclosure, and the number of individual allocations for areas such as wellness, administrative support, real-time operations center scheduling. These are not unrealistic or a burden upon our community when we look at the work that needs to be done.
So Chief, just to follow up on that, I mean, we've already discussed that we have the highest number of civilians for the other forces, and they do a whole bunch of other things that officers may do in other services. We're about to review our own budget and look at about 190 specific staffing positions to decide whether we're going to keep them or not. But police services just automatically adds a half a civilian for every officer that you're hiring. That's not a plan, Chief. That's not looking at what your needs are and saying we might need someone for this or someone for that. It's just an automatic. So Chief, can you commit to changing the approach and just providing then a better review of what your civilian needs are and hiring what you actually need and not just hiring on a formula?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay, but I don't, we're going to allow, okay, point of order being?
This has been established that we're going down a rabbit hole that is not the purview of this regional council, so I would suggest that we move on.
Well, I know that the chief was about to respond, so we're going to let him do that. Colleagues, I would remind you all that we're about 11:51. We are going to end at noon. So I believe Councillor Deutschmann has a question. Chief was going to answer. I'd encourage any of the rest of you who have either not had a question or have anything left to ask, you get in the queue because we will be wrapping up in 8 minutes. So Chief, do you want to answer the question?
So we've adopted this within this board-approved staffing plan, this formula for the addition of necessary civilian support component. And that allows us to be flexible in our deployment of civilian staff through the course of our duties. And there's immense complexity. It's not simply an automatic. Ms. Hand described in detail the approach that we take from a staffing evaluation standpoint, which is a committee meeting biweekly, evaluating the real-time staffing needs within the moment, within the unit, within the year, as required. And she determined that there was far more staffing requests than were granted because we've stuck to the formula. I could stand before you and advocate for immense growth in areas, but we've stuck to the plan, which is board approved. It's necessary for us to supplement areas, and we do it in a very complex and deliberate way. In a lot of our administrative areas, we have part-time, temporary part-time, full-time members, the allocation of members to fill those gaps as required because the work is 24/7, 365. We can't just let vacancies go without filling them with those backfilling provisions, with occupational absences of many forms, and then overtime as required. So there's immense complexity, and this community should be proud that our service has led the charge on civilianization. The request before that you mentioned about special constables being under consideration is top of mind for us. But there's a balance to how we modernize and change practices because there's a ripple effect to the safety and the wellness and how we adapt practices.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Not to have sour grapes over my point of order, but when the question ends with, and will you undertake to do better or different, I would tell you that that is not the purview of this council. That is the purview of the Chief of Police, his leadership staff, in concert with the board of WRPS. And that was the basis of my point of order. And I respect the chair's ruling, but I stand by that.
Okay, colleagues, that is all I have on the docket for questions for now. So with that, I'd like to thank the chief, Mr. McLean, the chair of the board, and the chief's leadership team for being here today to answer questions and make your presentation. I would like to head to the next agenda item, item 7, Community Safety and Policing Act. This item is being received for information. And I believe Ms. McCrae is available for any questions, should there be any. Okay, that being said, we will now consider a motion for holding a closed session of the Jack Young Award Committee later this afternoon. Do we have a mover and a seconder to consider that motion? Councillor James, moved by Councillor Foxton.
Chief still, like, do you want to let Chief know he's finished, or he's still standing there? I just wanted you to maybe let him know he's done. Thank you for coming in.
I did thank him and thank the complement of folks that were with him. I don't know if there was a wrap up, but we have moved on. So I'll get folks to vote on that motion that was moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Foxton with regards to the Jack Young meeting to be held later today. Okay, and colleagues, that is carried. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 27th. We will also have our final public input meeting that evening. Hearing from residents is, of course, critical part of the process, and I want to thank all residents who have shared their feedback through our public meetings. With that, now we will start on a vote to adjourn the strategic planning and budget meeting. No. So I will ask for a new mover and a seconder to close it. Councillor Nowak and second. Pardon me. Yeah, I know. Thank you, Joe. And Councillor Foxton, second on that. You good with that? Okay, we're gonna roll with Councillor Foxton. It's unanimous. Okay, colleagues, we'll see everybody back later today.